Delighted to be having a second conversation with author, creator Stuart Moore. Stuart, thank you for joining.
Oh, thanks for having me again.
Absolutely, my pleasure. My pleasure. On this episode, we're talking about your research work, some nonfiction exploration in the world of Marvel, and that is, yes, there it is, Doctor Strange, A Decade of Dark Magic. So glad to have you on to talk about this character and all of the things that you've been up to lately.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. This book is pretty close to my heart. I could talk about it all day.
Nice, nice. Uh, how did you initially connect with the character of Doctor Strange and the Marvel Universe and what he offers there?
I tell this story at the beginning of the book actually, but my I was more of a DC kid. I really only read of Marvel stuff when I was young. I really only read Spider-Man from the Marvel line, and when I was 16, a friend of mine who I'm still in touch with just sat me down with huge stacks of Marvel comics and said, "Read these." And it was all the great stuff of the 70s. And I was hooked. It just changed my life. It was great. And among those were the some of the Doctor Strange stuff I cover here, the revival of the early 70s by Steve Englehart and Frank Brunner as writer and artist. And that kind of led me into that whole universe and got me interested in the more cosmic and trippy end of Marvel Comics.
Yeah, yeah. I love the cosmic, the trippy, and the things that Doctor Strange offers there. What do you feel like are maybe a couple of trends or themes that you've uncovered and unpacked? Maybe something that emerged from the look through the publication history.
Yeah, well, it all goes back to Steve Ditko and Stan Lee, obviously. And even Stan acknowledged at the time in the early 60s that Ditko had brought the project in, and Stan, some of his early comments, he seems like he's not sure quite what to make of the series. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, we decided to give Steve 5 pages on this, and Stan scripted it." But as it goes along, there's a point in their collaboration. This was when it was running in the back of Strange Tales anthology comic. Um, there's a point in their collaboration where Ditko takes full control of the plotting. And that's when things really go um, become bizarre and go into multi-part stories in other dimensions, the dark dimension. Um, and the whole thing just kind of kicks up a notch. And then Ditko leaves rather suddenly. And at that point, the strip sort of gets handed around to various writers and artists, a lot of different writers and artists, actually. And I cover that as well, which led to Roy Thomas and Gene Colan spinning it off into its own comic at a point when the Marvel line expanded, um, which was ran for about a year and a half and then was 2 years maybe and was canceled. And then Doctor Strange didn't appear anywhere for almost 2 years, like not even a guest appearance, until they brought him back in some stuff that led into basically the Defenders.
Yeah, yeah. I'm always fascinated with some of those darker corners
Yeah.
of the comics universe. I'm curious about what you found that Doctor Strange kind of expands for Marvel. What does this character add to or change in the tapestry?
Well, he definitely brings in on the most obvious level, he brings in the magic element of the to the universe. Um, what I found reading all of these is that, like Thor, in a very different way, um, generally speaking a less grounded series than most of the Marvel books. It's not about most of the Marvel books, even when there are massive displays of power at work, are fairly street level. The characters are pretty identifiable. If they're not just street warriors, they're based in technology, like Iron Man. Um, and Doctor Strange is a whole different, like he's aware of multiple planes of existence that other people aren't, and he bears that responsibility. And it's actually Roy Thomas when he's writing the book who gets into that most, like the burden that sits on Doctor Strange's shoulders, and you feel it very strongly in the Englehart and Brunner stories, which bring in an added element of just the sort of there's a weird feel in those stories that magic is unpredictable. Like that he may be he may be able to wield all these forces, and he's been taught well, and he becomes the Sorcerer Supreme in the course of that storyline. Um, but he's it's a every time every time out on the road is a surprise for him. Basically, like things could go terribly wrong. There are people out there, there are um, creatures out there that can do things he can't even imagine. So it's always a process of learning, of growing, of trying to figure out how to wield the power and wield the enormous power he has. And he's arguably one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel universe. But how to use that in against foes that other heroes can barely even conceive of.
Yeah. You mentioned Roy Thomas there and Steve Englehart. Is there um, excuse me, a writer or creative team that you feel like really brought something interesting to the character, either from the time frame that you're talking about in your research or since?
I found that Englehart and Brunner really clicked on it, and I could see them sort of work when from what I've read, was just how they worked together, and there's a looseness to it, and some of the some of the sort of like weird twists that happen, little character bits and twists that happen. Um, feel like they might have been added by the artist. I don't know that for sure. But there's a the ground under their feet is always a little uncertain, like under the characters' feet, I mean, and that it feels like the stories are being created that way, like with a plan, obviously, and a point to make, but without anyone being certain of every step along the way. Um, so for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. I am very curious about the research process.
Yeah.
I'm a person that does research and enjoys digging through books and comics and other things. What was that like for you?
Well, my wife writes nonfiction, and I'm sure that you and she are both much better at research than I am. Um, but one thing I tried to do in this case is from the very beginning, Doctor Strange is established as being set in Greenwich Village, New York. And later on, Roy gives him an actual address in the East Village. And that's an area that I know pretty well from when I was younger. And I live in Brooklyn, but I would spend a lot of time down there. And I I did a little walking tour around there, and I did research into some of the institutions. Doctor Strange's address is we were just talking about this on Blue Sky, I think. That it's now a very bright, garish bodega that says with
How
giant signs
funny.
for hard soda and energy drinks all over it. Um, but which we figure is Wong using
Yeah,
concealment to kind of throw people off the path. And actually,
100%. Absolutely.
if you look up the Sanctum of Doctor Strange on Google Maps, it will take you to that address, which I think was a promotion with the first movie. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, I did that, and in the course of it, I started researching like the coffee shops of the area and some of the which was a big part of the folk music scene and the sort of the beat poetry scene that was all centered right there. And that led me to that led me to the film A Complete Unknown, which was just about to come out when I was finishing the manuscript.
Oh yeah.
And,
Uh-huh.
there's some weird synchronicity about all that stuff coming together that I cover in the epilogue to the book.
It's nice. It sounds like there was some Dylan influence on your writing process as well.
Yeah, Dylan's rise sort of parallels the rise of Doctor Strange, and I do cover that a bit. I also talk a bit about just the fortunes of Marvel Comics rising during that time. But Doctor Strange, as I said earlier, also he had a real rough patch in the late '60s and early '70s, where the the character seemed. I mean, you didn't have quite as many books coming out back then. You had a lot fewer books coming out back then. Um, so it was easy to kind of leave a character on the shelf for a year or two. Um,
Mm.
and it seems to have been Roy Thomas who really wanted to bring him back and brought him back as part of the Defenders, which led to them spinning off the new series in Marvel Premiere, I think it was, that led to his next ongoing title. But that was all like the process of writing the book was really interesting because these books are part of a new line called the Marvel Age of Comics, from Bloomsbury
Mm-hmm.
Publishing. And Bloomsbury publishes a long-running line called 33 and a Third, which are small format books, each about a different record album. And some of them written by music journalists, some of them, there's one by Jonathan Latham. They're written by a whole like broad swath of people. And these new books, the Marvel Age books, were conceived in that same mold, and they're actually handled by the same editorial team. Um, so the opportunity to kind of mix comics history, New York history, um, literary criticism in a way of a sort, um, and personal New York history, was irresistible. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it came together. Like there were points where I wasn't sure it was going to, but I think it came together into something. The epilogue is basically my meetings with Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, and Doctor Strange. So that's what the book leads up to.
Nice, nice, love it. Well, where can readers find out more about you and the book? And you're welcome to say anything about other titles, other things that you're working on that you can. I know you're a prolific person, so I want to give you the space to do that as well.
Oh, thank you. I'm working on a couple more Marvel related nonfiction books that I can't announce yet. Um,
Nice.
I have I have a graphic novel out with the amazing underground legend Matt Howarth called Meat that just came out from Cosmic Lion Productions. I did an issue of Ahoy Comics Toxie Team Up with the Toxic Avenger that'll be collected in a trade paperback in January. And I actually just wrote a particularly strange introduction to that book as well. Um, so that's all in the works. I can be reached. I have a website, stuartmoorewriter.com, which I should update more often than I do. I have but I'm most active on Blue Sky where I'm just Stuart Moore and Facebook, I'm Stuart Moore 1, and Instagram, I think I'm Stuart Moore 01. I don't know why that happened, but anyway, I'm pretty easy to find on those platforms. And I do a lot of work behind the scenes with Ahoy Comics, which is now publishing a lot of stuff by with the Toxic Avenger works, mostly masterminded by Matt Bors, and a lot of work by Mark Russell and some new stuff by Garth Ennis. Um, and Ahoy has a hilarious newsletter written by one of our PR people, Hannah Behedry, that I can't recommend highly enough. It's wonderful. So that's probably enough.
Awesome,
That's like
awesome.
enough to keep. There's other stuff, but that's enough to keep me busy for a while.
You are indeed prolific. You are prolific. Always glad to talk with you. Did we miss anything that
Same
you
here.
want to make sure to include about this project before we close
No,
out?
it'll be out. I think it's out November 13th. It's The first three books are. There's one called "The Mighty Avengers versus the 1970s" by Paul Cornell, which I've read, which is wonderful. There's Daredevil Born Again by Chris Ryall, which I haven't read yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And that'll be followed up in early 2026 with a book on Miles Morales by Yatasha Womack. So it's an interesting spread. Like originally, I think they wanted to feature one book from each decade of Marvel's existence, and it worked out loosely that way. But mine bleeds from the 60s into the 70s. Paul and I cover a little bit of the same territory, but from very, very different angles, which is kind of fun too. And there are a lot more to come.
That's awesome. Well, glad to hear that there are more on the way and that you're continuing to contribute to the universe. And certainly glad to have you back anytime to talk about those projects or anything else.
Well, thank you. I'll take you up on that. This is